So our next speaker is Connie Vargas. I'm so bad with her name. You know, if you have daily struggles, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a sin that you're involved in or somebody that has sinned against you. It can just be daily struggles. And let me tell you, this precious lady has been through some amazingly major struggles like I've never seen before. Yet, she's a servant of the Most High God. And listen to her story. She's very soft-spoken, but so powerful. And you will not believe her story. When Will My Life Be Normal is the name of her story. And you know what? If you're with Christ, your life is never going to be normal, right? Okay, well, I'm going to bring her out. They're going to bring her out here. Hold on a moment. She's in a wheelchair. So there we go. So please join me in welcoming Connie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be able to share my testimony with you. I'm going to open up with this scripture. It's Jeremiah 29:11. I'm just going to paraphrase it. It says, I know the plans that I have for you to bless you and to prosper you. And the reason why that scripture means a lot to me is because everything that I have gone through in life, for a long time, I never thought like anything of my life, that anything can come of it. Like, what use am I? Like, what good am I? What can I do? I have nothing to offer anybody. And it wasn't until I really learned what it was to have a relationship with God and who He was. It took me that long to realize, like, how much God does love me and there is a purpose for my life. And when I was 18 months old, I got burned in a house fire. I was at my grandmother's house, and it was my mom and my aunt, and I had my cousins and my brother and my sister at the time. Well, not my sister, actually, my brother. And, they're getting ready to take us to the park, and, we're all getting ready. And we were very small at the time, so, we're just running around the house and being kids, and, my mom and everybody else is getting ready. So we ended up running around to the back part of the room where my grandfather had, his tools and lawnmower. It was a service porch. And, my aunt started getting ready. She was getting in the shower. And, at this time, my family wasn't saved. So they didn't really, they knew of God. They didn't really know much about God or, what it was to have a relationship. So, she's getting ready to get in the shower. And, as she's getting in the shower, she just heard an audible voice tell her to go check on us. And, I believe that, it was God. So she gets back out of the shower and she goes to check on us. And as she goes to check on us, she realizes that, she sees liquid on the floor. She thought maybe one of us peed. So, she reaches over to smell it and she realizes that it's gasoline. So, she's in a panic. She's grabbing the closest kids to her, which were her two kids and my brother, and, she threw them out of the room. And I was in the farther part of the room. So she threw them out, and by the time, she threw them out, it was like the gasoline had already went over to the other room where there was a water heater, so the flames had ignited. And I was in the farther part of the room, so they weren't able to get me because the flames had blocked me in. So, my aunt's trying to get help. She's calling for my mom. And at this time, I'm literally on fire. So, I'm crying, and my mom's going in, and she's trying to get me. And the flames are just so unbearable that she can't. It's literally like this wind is just throwing the flames at her. She actually got burned on her hands a little bit. There was just like no way that she could get me. So she was running back out of the house to try to get help. And midway out of the house, she heard an audible voice, which we know is God at that time, tell her to go back and get me. So she went back in to go and try to get me. And at that moment, I started walking towards her. and the flames just split open. And I started walking towards her, and she was able to pull me out. I was able to get out of the house, and at the moment that everybody finally got out of the house, like everything just started exploding, like the windows and everything just really bad. And I was, they said, like, I don't remember anything from the fire. Like, what I'm telling you now is just what my family told me. And, I was in total shock. They said I wasn't even crying. I was just laying there in total shock. And, the ambulance came. They took me to the hospital. The burns were so bad that I was burned about 85% of my body with second to third degree burns. And, it was so bad that the doctors were like, there's no way she's going to live. Because at that time, there was other kids that had gotten burned, like severe burns, and they were older, and they didn't even live. So the doctors were like, there's no way she's going to live, constant, like, surgeries. And I actually died on the operating table a few times. They had to revive me. I was in the hospital. I had to do it. I was in intensive care for about 3 months in the ICU unit, and like no one was allowed to touch me. Like they had to keep everybody actually away from me because they didn't want me to get any like viruses or infections, because I literally had boils and blisters all over my body. They had me wrapped up like a mummy. So I stood in intensive care for about 3 months, and then after that, they transferred me to a hospital, a rehabilitation hospital, where I had to continue to have multiple surgeries. So I stayed in the hospital about a good year before I was able to go home. And so like after I was able to go home, I still continued to have to go in and out of the hospital with more surgeries. And then at the age of 8, at that time, still just being a normal kid, running around. Yeah, I looked different. But just being a typical kid, running around, playing, doing all the things that a kid does. And one day I was riding my bike, and there was a car that was parked on the sidewalk. So I decided to like go into the street and turn around and come back up. And when I did that, a drunk driver hit me. So I got hit by a car, and he drugged me, I would say. I don't know the exact feet or yards, but it was about 3 houses down. So when he finally came to the stop, because there was actually people outside at the time, so they're yelling at him to stop. He was drunk on drugs. So he finally stopped, and when he stopped, the car literally stopped like on my chest. So neighbors came out. They had to lift up the car and pull me out. And, I remember I was awake the whole time. It felt like a dream. I remember tumbling under the car, hearing the scrapes from my bike grinding against the ground. But, I remember crying, but I wasn't crying because I was in pain. I think I was more scared that I was going to die. I remember my mom coming out, and she's just like, everything's going to be okay. And I just remember crying, saying, Mommy, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And I stood in the hospital probably about a few months. Had to have multiples of surgeries as well. Like every other day, they were taking me in for surgery because he drugged me. A portion of my hip had came off, and the bone on my foot had came out. So they had to, had to have surgeries for that. And I was able to walk again after that, but not normal. So after that, it was kind of like I wasn't able to do everything I used to do as a kid, being able to run around, because I wasn't able to do that anymore because of my my foot. And after that, it was just like, okay, everything's fine. Just continue on being a kid and doing what we do. And after that, it changed everything, because from all the trauma caused from the car running me over, started having different things happening to my body. They didn't know exactly like what, because about a year after that, when I was about 10 and a half years old, I started going blind. So, and doctors didn't really know what was going on. It is nerve damage, so there's nothing that they can do about it. And I remember being in school, and it's reading time, and they want me to read a book, and it was just so blurry. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know that I was going blind. I was like, I can't see it. They thought I was lying, and I was just being lazy, and I didn't want to read. So they're calling my parents. She doesn't want to read. And my dad's like, why aren't you reading? I'm like, I can't see. So they took me to the doctors, and they're like, she's going blind. So I lost 75% of my eyesight. So I can only see I can see figures and objects, some colors, but I don't see any kind of detail. So most of my vision is gone. So there's nothing that they can do about that because it's nerve damage. So, it was tough after that because I had to, leave the school I was at. I was in the 4th grade at the time. So it was you make your friends, and now I got to change over to this other school where I had to learn Braille. So, even though I was burned, I never really felt different as far as, not being able to do everything like everybody. I knew I looked different, but then it was okay, now it's a little worse because it's now I can't see, and now I have to learn in a different way because I had to learn Braille, which I hated. So I'm dealing with that, switching schools, and then, so just, going on with life once again. And then at the age of 12, I got a disease called Devick's disease, which affects the spine and the nerves. And basically, it shuts your body down, and you end up dying from it. At that time, it was a very rare disease, so the doctors didn't even know what was causing it, what was going on. I was it started where it was gradually because I was able to walk at the time, so I was my arms were starting to get weak, my legs were getting weak. I had just finished, I had just had a surgery, so I thought maybe I just wasn't able to walk that good because of the surgery. And then it was just getting worse as time went on, and it was to the point where I couldn't even hold up my head. And, they took me to the doctor. They're doing all these tests, and they can't figure out what's going on. And finally, it was so bad, they're like, we have to do a biopsy to figure out what exactly is going on because it was so bad. They were like, she's going to die any day. So they did the biopsy. They figured out that it was Devick's disease. And because it was such a rare disease, they told my parents, wait and see if she wakes up from the surgery, but we don't think she is because this is what she has, and no one has ever lived from it. And they told him if I do wake up from the surgery, I wouldn't live longer than 2 weeks. So, I woke up from the surgery, and it was very frustrating because at that time it was completely paralyzed. I can't move. I can't see. My only communication was clicking my tongue for yes and no, and because I had tubes and pipes all over. And then while I was in the hospital, I ended up getting pneumonia. So because I got pneumonia, it affected my respiratory system, so I wasn't able to breathe on my own anymore. So they had to put me on an oxygen machine. So I can't breathe on my own. I can't see. I can't move. And I was in excruciating pain. And at that time, at the church that I was attending, there was an evangelist who had came to the church, and my parents had told him what was going on with me. So he prayed over a handkerchief, and he told them to put it behind my neck where they did the biopsy. And, in a matter of, it was I think a few weeks, I gradually started gaining my ability to move again. And at the same time as that was going on, my dad had told me that he was at my bedside one time, and he was just crying out to God for a miracle for me because he was I had been going through all this stuff, and just to see me like that, it was not something, it was really hard for him to see, and he just started crying out to God, telling him to heal me or if he has to take me home, then take me home, but he can't bear to see me suffering like that. And he told God, if you're going to hear her, then give him a sign, and he'll never question him again. And that at that moment, he seen me move a pinky for the first time, and I think it was weeks. And, and after that point, I just started gaining my ability to move again. I think I was released out of the hospital about 7 months later, and 9 months later, they had taken me off the oxygen machine. So I was able to go home, and, after that, it was like, life was okay, but I ended up going into a deep depression, and even though I hadn't went through everything I was going through, I had never dealt with depression because I think, God talks about childlike faith. It's like I was so young when all that was going on. So it was like, go through all these things and, I'm fine, get through it. But as I was getting older, because at that time that I got the Devick's disease, I was 12 years old. So I was already going into my teens. And I was so used to going in and out of hospital, in and out of a wheelchair. And, I was fine. But it was like this time it was different. It was like months were going by and I'm still in a wheelchair, going through therapy, but I'm still in a wheelchair. There's no change as far as, the ability to walk. And I ended up going into a deep depression without realizing it. And, it got to the point where I just isolated myself from everyone, didn't want to be around my friends. I stopped eating. Even if I wanted to eat, I couldn't eat. The minute I ate something, I would throw up. I got to the point where I weighed 87 pounds. And then it got to the point where I wanted to kill myself. I just hated life so much. I couldn't understand what was going on. I even told my mom at one point, it's like, why does everything happen to me, not my brother or my sister? And it wasn't that I wanted bad stuff to happen to them. I just couldn't understand why me. It's like, I just want to be a normal kid. At this time when I was going through my depression, I was already 13, 14 years old. So, as you get older, you see, teens dating, and I mean, that is kind of young, but, all these things go through your head as you get older, and it's like, I just want to be a normal teenager, be a normal kid, trying to, figure out all this stuff. And, there's many times that I would just lay in bed and just cry myself to sleep. And just want to die. And I would tell God, just let me die. I hate my life so much. I don't want to live. And so I dealt with that for a couple years. But I believe, through the prayers of my parents, I really overcame that. I mean, because it even got to the point where my parents took me to a psychiatrist, but I refused to talk to them, so I just let the lady talk to herself for an hour. So I was like, I could be a little stubborn, but so, just chilling with that. And then, as I got older, the disease that I had, it could come back at any time. So it came back again when I was 18, and God healed me from it. And then it came back again when I was 21. And, I grew up in church, but, church was forced on me, God was forced on me. So, of course, it was I was rebellious. I was like, I don't want to go to church. Once I came 18, I was like, I'm 18, I don't have to go to church no more. But at 21, my dad was really sick, and the doctors gave him a year to live, and I was so close to my dad. So I chose to go back to church and serve God for my dad, not for myself. But, God has a plan. He knows how to reach us. So, at the age of 21, I gave my life back to Christ, but I served him because I wanted to. And during that time at the church that I was attending at the time, the beginning of every year, they would do the first week of prayer and fasting. And I remember feeling the disease coming back. I was like doing my makeup one day, and it's like my arms were getting weak. And I was just like, oh no, I could feel the disease coming back. And I always told myself if I ever got the disease back again, I wasn't going to tell anybody. I was like, I'd rather just die because I'm not going through all this stuff again. It was just so painful. And so I was in the middle of my prayer and fasting, and I'm just crying out to God. I'm like, you have to heal me. Heal me or take me home to be with you because I can't do this again. And at the end of that week of prayer and fasting, God had completely healed me, and I have never gotten the disease back again. So ever since then, the last 15 years, life has been good. Like everything's been good. I'm like, seeing life in a different way, being able to, like, because I was serving God, it was like, I wasn't depressed anymore, enjoying life, seeing my blessings, doing what God has called me to do. The last 15 years is just like doing things that I would never thought in a million years that I would do, Even though I'm in the situation that I'm in, it's like I didn't let it stop me from living life, still going with life, still enjoying life, doing things that I love to do, living on my own, like I live life to the fullest. I'm not going to let my abilities stop me from, living life. So it's like I'm 26 years old at the time. I'm living on my own, I'm in the process still of writing my biography, traveling the world, doing missionary work, and been to Israel and Turkey, Africa, the Philippines, Thailand, and, a lot more other countries and stuff. So just, doing what God has called me to do. But one thing that I've always told God was like, I really, really want you to use me to heal people. I do not want to see people hurt, so use me to heal them physically, mentally, emotionally. That's what I really, really want. And it's always been my prayer, always been my desire. And I had spent 3 months in Romania on a missionary trip, and that was probably the first time God like really opened up the door to and used me in that area. And I was telling my testimony when I was over there, and they had me close the service. And I was praying healing over, the congregation and the people. And at the end of the service, after service was over, people started coming up to me, and they were like, after you prayed that prayer of healing, God healed me because I had pain in my back. And, a couple of people were telling me what was wrong with me and with them. And they're like, I don't have any more pain. And it was kind of like, since that day forward, God was just using me to lay hands on the sick. And, another time was, I was in Thailand and, just going around and doing, involved with ministries that had to do with the lady boys and, sex trafficking and that type of thing. So I got the opportunity to pray with them too. Like there's people, lady boys that I prayed for that had pain, and I'm laying hands on them, and they're like, I feel heat all over my body because I had pain. I have pain here in my stomach, and God's just healing them, and He's just using me. So this is what's going on in my life for the last 15 years, and doing different outreaches with my church, going into Hollywood and reaching out to the transgender community and being able to pray for them, hanging out in Hollywood and, giving free hugs, passing out roses, just letting people know that it's a token of God's love for them, and just seeing them so touched at that moment, like, coming across people that are saying, like, I was going to go kill myself, or I needed that today. Seeing God heal people right there on the street corner, just seeing God move. This one particular time, one of my other really good friends, God uses her in the gift of healing too, and we were out there in Hollywood, and we came across some homeless people, and they had pain in their back and their legs. So she's praying for one, I'm praying for the other, and God totally just heals them right there. And they were just so amazed, and they were like, oh my gosh, I felt this heat come over, my pain in my back's gone. And they're like, I don't understand, I just drank a beer, and I was like, it's okay. This is how much God loves you. He wants you to know that he loves you so much that he's demonstrating his love for you, that he's going to heal you no matter what. And they were just so blown away that they were like, come back again. When are you going to come back? And we'll hold out signs, and we'll have everybody line up for you guys, and you can pray for them. So we kind of just chuckled because I thought maybe they were joking. They're like, no, we're serious. I was like, oh, okay. So just, things like that. I volunteer at Children's Hospital, once a week. So I'm just, doing all these things that God has called me to do, enjoying life. And then it's like all of a sudden, once again, I start getting pain in my back. And, I'm going to the doctors. They're telling me nothing's wrong with me. They're giving me pain medicine. And, so it goes away. I'm fine for a little bit. And then I'm going back. And then, finally they tell me that I end up in an emergency. And they're like, because I'm in excruciating pain. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, crying, can't figure out what's going on. And then they tell me you have a tumor in your spine. So, it didn't really affect me at the moment because I was just like, okay, got a tumor. They'll do the surgery. I'll be fine. And then so, they do the surgery. And then when I come out of the surgery, it's like I'm so used to being independent, living on my own, getting dressed, do everything myself. Of course, I do need like some help with certain things, but have people around to help me with the things that I can't do. But, I'm totally independent. So it's like I'm coming out of this surgery, and it's like I can't move at all. Like I can't dress myself. I can't feed myself. And then they tell me that because the tumor was on my spine and attached to the nerves, that they were able to remove most of it, but not all of it. So that I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. The good thing was that it wasn't cancerous, but they're like, it is the type of tumor that can grow back. So I'm dealing with all that, and then, going up and down with depression, trying to keep my faith, and then trying to figure out, exactly what's going on. I'm like, not again. Everything's been fine. I've gone through all this in life. I think the first thing, it's like, what did I do wrong? Did I not pray enough? Did I not read enough? Like, what's going on here? So I'm going up and down with depression, and then because I didn't have good Medi-Cal or, any kind of medical at the time, they're like, no one will take what you do have. So for rehabilitation, you have to go to a convalescent home. So that really took me down because I'm 36. At this time, this was about a year and a half ago. So at this time, I was 34, and I just spent my birthday in the hospital and Thanksgiving. So I'm 35 now. And then now I'm 36, but this was about a year and a half ago. So, I'm dealing with depression going up and down, and I'm 35 years old at the time. I'm like, I should be getting married and having children, having a family, not going through all this stuff again. I'm like, God, what's going on? I don't understand. And it's like, so I got all these things going through my head, and it's like, even though I'm feeling all these different things, it's like I just know that God's gonna do something, give me a miracle. I don't know how he's gonna do it, supernaturally in the natural, but it's like I just know this isn't what he has for me. There's gonna be something at the end of it, but the hard part is the waiting part, in the midst of all that, because the doctors are like, it's gonna take you 3 months to recover from the surgery. So I'm in excruciating pain, trying to deal with all this, and it's like, I know I'm gonna be okay, but it's the waiting part that's the frustrating part, because, I'm in pain. And, I'm having all these conversations with God, trying to figure out what's going on. And then finally, I'm just like, okay, Lord. I'll start trying to figure all this, but even though it's like I know he's going to heal me, it's like I'm still like, God, I need a miracle, because it's like I'm still doing other speaking engagements, and I'm like, God, I can't go and tell these people, I've gone through this, and, he's healed me, but yet I still have a tumor. I was like, God, you got to give me something to brag about. Like, you know? So it's like, I need a miracle. So, I'm like, they're getting ready to release me from the convalescent home. So it's like, we're going to do, MRI before we send you home. So they do the MRI, and then they're like, okay, your tumor's still there, but, it hasn't grown, so that's a good thing, Come back in a couple months, and, we're going to give you another MRI, because this is something that I'm going to have to continue to do for the rest of my life. So, I'm still having this conversation with God. I'm like, God, heal me, God, heal me. So, last year in February, I go back for my last MRI, and the results come back, and the doctor's like, there's no trace of your tumor. So this has been my life, and even though, I'm going through everything, it's I still have my days where it's frustrating, but what really helps me get through it is just keeping my focus on God and seeing the positive things in life. Like, we're gonna go through things in life whether we serve God or not. But how awesome is it to know, like, when we do go through these situations, he's going to be there to give us the strength and the peace to get through it. And that's the way, like, I see it, and I choose. Because, even though I'm like this, and, I know that God is going to heal me one day. I know that I will walk again and I will see again. Like, I've learned to count my blessings. It's like I could be totally blind. I could be paralyzed. But I am thankful for the ability. I'm able to walk a little bit, like with a walker. So I am thankful that I have feeling, that I am able to walk a little bit. I am thankful for the family and the friends that God has blessed me with, because when I was in the hospital, there was kids there that lived in the hospital because their parents abandoned them. And, my parents were there every single day. There was not a day that they did not go to the hospital. So I have learned to count my blessings, because my life could be worse. And what I want to encourage you guys is, like, we're all going to go through things, but just keep your faith, keep on fighting, keep on pressing forward. God can use you no matter what. Like, he's just there. Like, don't give up. So, yeah.
Isn't she amazing?